The driveway was covered in frost when I pulled in. I expected to see the porch light on maybe a wreath, some soft music spilling out through the front window. Instead, the house looked abandoned. No lights, no warmth, just the echo of silence pressing against the glass. I sat in the car for a few seconds, staring at the dark windows, thinking maybe I got the wrong date. But no December 24th. Christmas Eve. I was supposed to be home. I grabbed my bag, walked up the steps, and found the spare key exactly where it had always been, under that cracked ceramic frog my dad swore was too ugly to steal. I let myself in, expecting voices. Smells something. Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint click of the heater struggling to kick on. The kitchen light was on, dim yellow, and at the table, hunched over a sandwich like it might fall apart if he chewed too hard, was Grandpa Alden. He looked up when he heard me, eyes tired but kind. "You're here," he said, as if I was late for something. "Where's everyone?" I asked, dropping my bag by the door. He nodded toward the fridge. "They left you a note." I walked over, already uneasy. Taped to the door was a torn piece of notebook paper, my mom's handwriting. Slanted fast, all caps, "Used your money to invest in stocks. Will explain later. Watch, Grandpa." For a few seconds I didn't move, just stared. I read it again. Then again. Each time the words hit harder. $24,000. Gone. The money I'd spent 4 years saving. Double shifts. Canceled weekends. Skipping dinners out. All of it evaporated with a single sentence taped to a refrigerator door. I sat down across from Grandpa, still holding the note in my hand like proof of a crime. "They went to Maui," he said quietly. "Left yesterday morning. I couldn't even speak. I thought maybe you'd sent them something," he added when I noticed the envelope was gone. I shook my head. "No, I didn't send anything." I opened the fridge. Half a loaf of bread. Condiments. A bottle of tonic water. No milk. No leftovers. The sink was full of dirty dishes, and a final notice from the power company lay unopened by the toaster. "Have you eaten anything besides that?" I asked, pointing at the sandwich. His eyes drifted toward the floor. "Haven't managed much else this week." My chest burned, but I stayed quiet. I didn't cry. Not yet. I tossed the note onto the counter and turned to him. "All right," I said. "First we're going to get you a proper meal. Then I'm going to find out exactly how deep this goes." And as I pulled out my phone, I knew one thing: this wasn't just about money anymore. I made Grandpa Alden oatmeal with apples and honey the way he used to make it for me when I was little. He ate slowly but finished the whole bowl, thanking me like I'd just brought him a steak dinner. I cleared the table and ran the dishwasher, pretending my hands weren't shaking. I didn't want to think about the money yet. Not while he was still hungry. Not while the house felt so cold. But when I sat down with my laptop and logged into my online banking account, the truth I'd been trying to outrun stared back at me in numbers. Final transfer 3 days ago. Destination a brokerage account I didn't recognize listed under my parents' names. Balance 0. $24,000. Gone. I closed the laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling like maybe I'd find the answer up there. But all I found were memories. I started saving when I was 16. Dad had just lost his job at the auto shop, and Mom's part-time hours at the craft store barely covered groceries. I applied at the diner down on Maple, then picked up a second shift at the laundromat on weekends. While my friends went to football games and danced under paper streamers at prom, I cleaned lint traps and counted tips in the break room. Not because anyone made me, because I didn't want us to drown. I remember the day I opened my first savings account. I handed my mom the folder with the account number, proud and exhausted after my 6th straight weekend of double shifts. She smiled and said, "Banks prey on young people. Just transfer it to our family account. I'll keep it safe until you need it." I nodded. I believed her. Every month I sent $500, then $600, then $800 when I picked up more hospital shifts. I skipped vacations. I drove a car that coughed every time I turned left. I lived on rice beans and pride, and every time I doubted myself, I thought this is how people get free. Slowly, quietly, on their own terms. Lyric never had to think like that. She was 6 years younger and somehow lived in a different version of our house. When I turned 16, I got a used backpack and a pile of bills. When she turned 16, she got a new phone and an ice cream cake with her name in cursive. She never had to take a job, never asked what anything cost, never offered to help when I was working through flu season and finals. She's more sensitive, Mom always said. We don't want to burden her. I used to tell myself it didn't matter, that I was the strong one, that some people carried more because they could. But now, sitting in a house with no Christmas lights, no family, and no money, I wondered if I'd been carrying things that were never mine to hold. I looked across the room at Grandpa asleep in his chair, and then at the envelope I'd taped shut with our bank statements inside. I opened my laptop again, not to check the damage, but to start tracking it. Every withdrawal, every date, every lie. Because if they thought they could take everything and still call it love, they were about to learn how much I had left. I woke up to the sound of Grandpa coughing in the next room. It was raw and shallow, like his lungs were trying to clear dust. I wrapped myself in a blanket and padded into the hallway. He was already in the kitchen by the time I got there, leaning heavily on the counter as he filled a glass of water. His hands trembled so badly the glass nearly slipped. I took it from him gently, helped him to the table, and tried to keep my face neutral. "Did you take your morning meds?" I asked. He looked at me like I'd reminded him of something he was trying not to think about. "I ran out 2 days ago," he admitted. I asked Lyric to pick them up, but she said she was busy. I opened the kitchen cabinet where we always kept his pill organizer. Empty. I checked the drawers. Nothing. The refill notice from the pharmacy sat unopened under a stack of grocery store flyers. His name printed neatly on the label, the pickup date circled in pink highlighter. 5 days ago. My stomach tightened. While Grandpa sipped his water, I walked through the house making mental notes. The sink was full of dishes crusted in dried food. The refrigerator had 2 expired yogurts, a jar of pickles, and 3 containers of takeout, all weeks old. The bread on the counter had a patch of mold, and the fruit bowl held a single shriveled orange. I found unopened utility bills stacked by the front door. One envelope was red and stamped, "Final Notice." Lyric had been here. Her jacket was still on the coat rack, her makeup bag on the bathroom counter. But care. That was absent. I checked the guest room where she sometimes stayed when she watched Grandpa. The bed was made, but there were snack wrappers on the floor and an empty wine bottle under the nightstand. I sat back down with Grandpa, opened my laptop again, and clicked through the last 6 months of bank activity. The pattern was subtle, always just a few $100s, sometimes less. Grocery trips that never resulted in groceries. Family emergencies labeled on the transfer notes. Then, more recently, larger withdrawals. One marked investment opportunity. Another for flight confirmation. I didn't recognize half of it, but the dates lined up too perfectly. They'd been taking the money slowly at first, then faster, then all at once. "I'm sorry," Mira, Grandpa said quietly. "I should have said something, but I didn't know how." I turned to him. "You knew they were taking your money." His eyes filled. "Not at first. Last year when the kitchen remodel started, they told me it was just a loan, said they'd pay me back monthly, but there was always some reason. Connor's tuition, Lyric's car. And after a while, I stopped asking. I felt the ache settle behind my ribs, sharp and familiar. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd used him too. Soft hands. Old trust. I reached across the table and took his hand in mine. "Then we stop asking," I said, "and we start protecting what's left." He nodded once, slow and deliberate, as I opened the manila envelope and laid out the first page of records on the kitchen table. I didn't call them. Not when I saw the brokerage transfer. Not when I realized Grandpa's prescriptions were 5 days overdue. Not when I found the overdraft notice tucked beneath a Red Lobster coupon on the counter. There wasn't a point. They knew exactly what they did. They were counting on me to accept it, to sigh and clean up the mess like I always had. Instead, I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Damage Control. Every receipt, bank transaction, and transfer got logged. I took photos of the fridge, the moldy bread, the final notices. I scanned Grandpa's pharmacy alerts, utility bills, and the prescription pickup slip still attached to the bag Lyric had never opened. I pulled screenshots of text messages from my mom, phrases like, "We're all in this together and you're so responsible, it's inspiring," and added them to the pile. When I was done, I emailed Rachel. She replied within an hour. She always had a sixth sense for when I wasn't okay. Back in college, she was the only one who noticed when I dropped 10 pounds during finals or when I quietly skipped dinner 3 nights in a row. Now she was a corporate attorney in Seattle, but she still answered my messages like we were roommates in our tiny off-campus apartment eating microwave burritos and dissecting legal dramas. I told her everything. She didn't waste time with sympathy. "You need to get power of attorney for your grandfather, immediately." She sent me the forms. I printed them at the library down the street and brought them home in a plastic sleeve. Grandpa read every line carefully. He didn't ask questions. He just looked at me, nodded once, and signed. "I should have done this a year ago," he said, pressing his palm over mine. We got it notarized at the pharmacy that afternoon. I asked the tech if they had the rest of Grandpa's medications ready. They didn't. Insurance hadn't cleared the refill. Apparently, someone had tried to pick them up with the wrong ID. I didn't ask who. That night after Grandpa went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a list. 1. Cancel joint access. 2. Open new accounts. 3. Document every loss. 4. Cut communication at least until we had leverage. When I opened Instagram, they were tagged in a photo. My mom in a floral wrap dress, cocktail in hand. Dad with sunglasses and a hotel towel around his neck. Sunset cruise with my love. Had deserved hatch paradise time. The comment section was full of hearts and envy. People saying how cute they were, how happy they looked. I didn't comment. I didn't message. I just took a screenshot and filed it under vacation funded by theft. By the next morning, I had closed the account that once held my student loan savings. I rerouted Grandpa's Social Security checks to a new bank. I locked the mailbox and set a password on every utility and medical portal. When the pharmacist called again, I confirmed my identity and told them to reject anyone else trying to access Grandpa's file. I didn't scream. I didn't send dramatic texts. I just made it impossible for them to touch anything else. When I hung up the phone, I poured myself a glass of water, looked at the neat stack of folders on the table, and felt something I hadn't felt in days. Control. And I knew when they finally came back, they wouldn't be walking into the same house they left. 3 days later, my father's name lit up on my phone. I let it ring until it stopped. He called again and again. I finally answered on the 4th attempt. Not because I wanted to hear what he had to say, but because I wanted to know how desperate he sounded. "Mira," he said, breathless. "Thank God. We need to talk." I didn't reply. I just waited. There was static on the other end, then a sharp exhale. The market dropped. We didn't see it coming. Look, it's complicated. We just need to get through this week. We'll fix everything, I promise." Silence stretched between us. I could hear waves crashing faintly in the background, or maybe a fountain. I imagined him calling from a hotel balcony in Maui, still in swim trunks, sunburned and stunned. We lost almost everything he said. The fund, it's wiped out. I looked down at Grandpa's bank folder on the kitchen table. I'd just finished sorting every document into labeled sleeves, medical housing, legal savings. All sealed, all protected. I need to borrow just enough to stabilize things, he added. "We'll pay you back, of course. It's just temporary." I didn't speak. "Mira, you there?" I stood and walked toward the front window. It was raining. The street outside looked empty except for the neighbor's trash can blown over by wind. "You knew that money wasn't yours," I said finally. He stumbled. "We were investing in our future, yours included. It wasn't selfish. We thought it would help everyone. You thought I wouldn't notice, I corrected." There was another pause. "Look, we don't have time to argue. I just need you to send something, please." I hung up. That night after Grandpa went to bed, I printed a notice on my laptop and sealed it in a manila envelope. Then I drove across town and taped it to their front door. "Access revoked. Unauthorized withdrawals documented. Repayment required. See attached terms." Inside were photocopies of the account statements, the legal affidavit of power of attorney, and a letter outlining a repayment plan, fixed monthly amounts. 8% annual interest, zero tolerance for delay. I knew they wouldn't like it. That was the point. I didn't stay to see if the porch camera caught me. I didn't want the confrontation. I just wanted it on record. They'd made this about money, so I would treat it like money, cold, measurable, enforceable. The next morning, my mother texted me, "What is this about? We need to talk." I didn't answer. They'd had their chance to talk when they emptied my account, when they left Grandpa without food, when they chose stocks over people. I spent the day scheduling a home visit with Grandpa's new physician and confirming his place at the assisted living center near my apartment in Portland. We'd done the virtual tour together on my phone, and he'd quietly said, "Looks peaceful," before folding his hands and nodding once. That night, I sat with him in the living room while he told me about how he met Grandma at a diner after her nursing shift. He said she never raised her voice, but she never backed down either. "You remind me of her," he said, his voice raspier than usual. I smiled, but I didn't say anything. I was too focused on what came next, because they were coming home in 2 days. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what would happen when they walked through the door. They showed up 2 hours earlier than expected. My dad's truck pulled into the driveway first, followed by Mom's car. No suitcases, no Lees, no smiles. Just tension radiating off them like heat. I opened the door before they could knock. My mother pushed past me without a word. My father followed, jaw set. "What the hell is this?" he asked, holding the envelope I'd left on their door like it was toxic. Mom threw her purse onto the couch. "You humiliated us. Our neighbors saw that. You couldn't just wait until we got back." "I waited years," I said quietly. "Don't get self-righteous," Dad snapped. "We were trying to help you. That money wasn't stolen, it was redirected. You'll get it back." "No," I said. "I won't. And even if I did, that's not the point." Grandpa shuffled in from the hallway, leaning on his cane. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood there watching us like a judge waiting for the noise to settle. "You're being manipulated," Mom said to him. "She's filling your head with, 'You already took everything Grandpa said,' cutting her off." His voice was soft but steady. "She's just giving it definition." The room went silent. Mom blinked like she hadn't heard him right. "We did what we had to do for the family. We were under pressure." "You were reckless," I said. "And you made it everyone else's problem." Mom's voice cracked. "How can you be so cold after everything we've done for you?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she still believed that enabling, manipulating, and emptying our accounts was love. "This isn't revenge," I said. "It's responsibility, the kind you never taught us." Dad opened his mouth to argue again, but Grandpa raised a hand. "That's enough," he said. No one spoke after that. They stood in our living room like guests in a stranger's house. And for the first time, it actually felt like mine. I looked at Grandpa, then at the stack of documents on the table beside me. We were ready. Grandpa moved into his new place 2 weeks later. The staff at Oak Haven already knew his name when we walked in. His room had sunlight, a recliner by the window, and enough space for his crossword collection and the photo of Grandma he still kept by his bed. I visited every other day, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit and listen. He said he didn't miss the house, only the quiet parts of it. My parents didn't call. Lyric never reached out. I heard the house went on the market a month later. "Great Bones needs updates," the listing said. I didn't disagree. I started rebuilding my savings. Small transfers this time to an account only I could touch. Some nights I worked extra shifts. Others I sat on my apartment floor surrounded by papers planning a life I finally owned. On my way to work one morning I passed the old house. A for sale sign leaned crooked in the yard. The windows were empty. The porch was still cracked where Dad always said he'd fix it. I didn't slow down, but I smiled. Some houses aren't homes, and some families only teach you what not to become.